Good morning. My name is Joe Sewash. I'm the Virginia Geographic Information Network Coordinator. I want to begin by thanking everyone for joining today's webinar. During the webinar, we'll be reviewing the process that has landed us in the draft mode and distribution of the updated GIS Strategic Plan. We'll go over the input that was solicited from a variety of stakeholder communities, including state agencies, localities, academia, the private sector. Also, the VGIN Advisory Board has reviewed and provided feedback on this plan at their November meeting. I'll go over the timeline for the next steps in both deploying the plan and beginning implementation in Q1 of 2020. At the outset, I'd like to remind folks that if you are on a speakerphone or headset, please make sure to mute your line so that we don't get background noise taking over the audio bridge. Across the presentations of this material, it has averaged, or we've targeted, approximately 30 minutes for you to have to listen to me. We've got an hour of time frame on the WebEx reservation, so there should be plenty of time for feedback and comments as we progress through the slide deck. And you also will always have the option to provide questions and input and feedback into the chat box. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. As a baseline set, the strategic plan that VGIN has had in the past has traditionally been on a 5-year cycle. Because the Integrated Services Program is supporting the deployment of Next Generation 911 across the Commonwealth over the next 3 years, ISP made the decision to synchronize the 911 Comprehensive Plan and the GIS Strategic Plan into this 3-year time frame. It helps us integrate across the respective programs within ISP, but also reflects the priorities of stakeholder communities as well as ISP staff that are going to be paramount over the next 3 years. We want to, in this VGIN strategic plan, provide a transparency and an engagement or a focus on enterprise engagement, making sure that our activities are reflective of the priorities of the agencies, the localities, and the other stakeholder groups. Also, as a departure from past practice, we have completed the strategic plan process with internal resources. So we have done listening meetings, we've done town hall meetings, we've done one-on-one engagements across the stakeholder community. Also within the VITA structure internally, there's been a mandate or a directive to focus on one-page format for prioritizing content, but then also utilizing alternative means to push for both deployment, transparency, and execution of the strategic plan. But the plan itself is a one-page document with supplementation that we'll go into. We focused through the input period and the drafting period on the context of enterprise engagement. We recognize that across Commonwealth agencies as well as localities, there is a diversity of what individuals have as the enterprise that they're members of in a business context. So we've got very, very large state agencies. We have state agencies that are running with a relatively modest platform and a small number of staff. And so we want to be able to recognize that as we identify the priorities and implement the strategic initiatives, that we take that into account and not just focus in one particular area or only on the most effective or the largest enterprises. We want to make sure to be able to cover that across the board. We also want to make sure that this is not mandatory. that coming into this, hello. I've got a message on the chat line that it sounds like there was a mute from me. So I will go back to the top of this slide and restart. The enterprise engagement needs to be relevant to all levels of GIS proficiency and GIS resources. We have a number of state agencies with large platforms, large number of folks both participating and using the platforms. We have other agencies that have more modest platforms, but still have a significant number of users. And the entities and the initiatives that we support throughout the communities, we want to make sure are relevant across that spectrum. We want to make sure, and there'll be both in the priority review and in the strategic initiatives, a focus on benefits. If this does not benefit a stakeholder community or a particular enterprise, we need to hear that feedback from you to be able to know what needs fixed or what's not addressing your needs. Again, nothing is prescriptive across the process. Everything that we would put out would be with the expectation that it is a best practice or something that's been successful across or shared from another enterprise or with input from a broader stakeholder community, but still nothing ends up being prescriptive in nature. We want to make sure that VGIN's focus is on supported facilitation. This is not a document or a process that we simply check mark, put the document on the shelf or on the website, so to speak, and then we'll revisit it when it's time for it to be refreshed in at the end of 2022. This is going to guide VGIN's internal activities, our external facing activities, and also through this facilitation, hopefully help stakeholder communities, state agencies to work better with localities, localities and state agencies to work better with the private sector and academia. We want to set up this as an infrastructure for communication and sharing of best practices, successes, ability to work together within and across the stakeholder communities. And again, all of this is contingent on your input. If not the folks in Richmond in the Monroe building pontificating, we want to make sure that we create an environment and create output that is relevant and helps you do your GIS job better on a day-to-day basis, and also helps facilitate the engagement of GIS across the variety of sectors and opportunities that are upcoming in the context of your IT infrastructure, security issues, data analytics, reuse and demonstration of the value of GIS to those that are the decision makers. So the engagement model. The VGIN staff are depicted through the VITA Integrated Services Program on this graphic. The VGIN Advisory Board is a 16-member board that is composed of legislative participants, as well as designees from the governor's office and specific programs as prescribed by Code of Virginia. Code of Virginia does provide responsibilities that VGIN needs to adhere to and maintain. It provides a scope box for us to operate in terms of what is expected of VGIN moving forward. The two new pieces that we are proposing and will be developing through time is the agency advisory group, which will be managers and other high-level participants across state government to be able to provide access to the direction of agency enterprises and the technical staff as subject matter experts for the initiatives that we undertake, as well as the locality advisory group. So we'll have a similar group for state agency, for local government GIS managers, IT managers, elected officials, to, again, provide feedback and input on the direction and scope of work that the group undertakes, but also access to the subject matter experts to participate in the development of the strategic initiative deliverables. The draft strategic plan is depicted on this slide. I'll go ahead and switch over to a better view of it. You can see that we've developed 4 priority categories for policy and strategy, engagement, collaboration, and communication across the stakeholder communities, as well as the 5 strategic initiatives that are derived from those priorities and that we've identified as specific areas that we will look at each one of those management groups to address and give us feedback on prioritization within the strategic initiatives moving forward. To look at the specific priorities for policy and strategy, we wanted to make sure to come up with best practices, success stories, and roadmaps, if you will, for aligning the GIS strategy within a particular enterprise to the goals of your business enterprise as an effective way of raising awareness of the importance of GIS and how the investment in GIS resources for staff, platforms, data development, et cetera, contribute to the agency's business process and ultimate delivery of those business line services to the citizens. We want to be able to demonstrate and encourage the increase of the utilization for geospatial investments. Analytics is certainly a big in this area, making sure to draw on the successes that we can already demonstrate with API-driven processes to utilize the geospatial database and objects for the multitude of available processes. And then also improving the integration with your business applications and the results and being able to demonstrate that to those that make the prioritization and funding decisions within your particular enterprise. We also want to encourage awareness and sharing among the stakeholder communities on things like IT security, platforms, et cetera. In the engagement area, again, being able to provide opportunities, templates, success stories for showing business value from geospatial data, geospatial resources, and applications. Again, tying that to how the decision makers prioritize things, encouraging folks to think in terms of how does the business benefit through cost avoidance, cost efficiency, establishing what cannot be done previously through their geospatial investments to help that moving forward. And then finally, developing this concept of a GIS technology roadmap, having a strategic idea of how your GIS can help future directions within your business line. How do you think about and plan for platform migration, staff readiness as the technology and the field evolves through time, how do you keep your staff oriented
Just
and
like hearing
prepared
it
to meet the future? So in this area, for the collaboration area, we want to improve the integration within the stakeholder communities, having the various manager groups provide a forum and a table for agency managers to articulate their needs, directions, and initiatives, find opportunities for collaboration, areas of mutual interest and mutual benefit. We also want to be able to cross those stakeholder platforms. And if you recall in the preceding diagram, we have links between the state agency group and the locality groups so that we can help those folks work better together and discover new opportunities. In the areas of communication, again, focus on best practices, peer-to-peer exchange, thinking in terms of updating and developing data standards and other technical information, which we'll see in some of the strategic initiatives. And then also thinking about consistency and ways to continuously improve on the usability and messaging of the documentation, both within the geospatial community and across the community of potential users. As we move towards analytics, IoT, we increasingly see folks that are not geospatially oriented seeking to utilize these through APIs, through other resources, and making sure that that we engage those folks to maximize the extent of the community and its reach and utilization. Any questions or comments and discussion on the priority section of the strategic plan? As we talked about earlier, the strategic plan is oriented to be a one-page document to really cull and focus the direction of both VGIN's resources as well as the community. We'll also be developing a story map and various templates and dashboards to supplement this. We really look for this to be a living document that we can point folks to, and it'll be the touchstone for how we implement and deploy things going forward. It'll also be the opportunity to delve deeper into the 4 priority areas and the 5 strategic initiatives so that folks can stay up to date. We'll have status, we'll have their availability of various websites, demonstrations, et cetera, that we can build into this document and use as a touchstone going forward for the broader community. So to look specifically at to begin looking at the strategic initiatives, number 1 is priority identification, and we'll rely on the facilitation and the input and the feedback from the manager groups, both for the state agencies and the localities initially, and then we'll seek to grow that to also support academia and the private sector. The local government manager meetings will have startups in January and February. That'll also apply to the state manager groups. As we have those first couple of meetings, we will begin putting together work plans and how we want to be able to integrate across the stakeholder groups, and then we'll evolve to quarterly meetings. As we said, we want the localities and the state agency managers to be able to articulate the priorities in their geospatial community, both as individual enterprises, and then we'll collect those as stakeholder communities so that we can, again, demonstrate that VGIN is applying its resources in responsiveness and in transparency to the stakeholder communities. And then we'll also be looking at survey content to be able to, again, provide another path for input, for validation, and for transparency. In 2020, the columns that you see here highlighted roughly translate to what we're targeting internally with VGIN to establish a once per month tempo for our facilitation of the various groups. The VGIN Advisory Board nominally meets on January, April, July, and October, as indicated by the yellow highlights. We would target the February, May, August, November sequence for the State Managers Advisory Group, and then the blue highlights for March, June, September, and December for the locality managers. So that helps us manage input and productivity in between meetings from quarter to quarter across the groups. It also gives us the opportunity to set up, whether it's through update reports through staff or even having cross-participation from, for example, a state agency manager participant to sit in on the VGIN Advisory Board and update them on the progress of the group, or that's something that VGIN staff could also work with the group to provide that coordination. Strategic initiative number 2 deals with technical issues and data standards. Throughout the 2015 to 2017 timeframe, VGIN staff developed standards through the ITRM process for road center lines, address points, PSAP boundaries, and administrative boundaries. We want to make sure that those are validated against the current standards that were considered, for instance, from the National Emergency Number Association, from the U.S. Postal Service, from a variety of content sources and input that have progressed or incremented through time, that it's appropriate for these standards to be updated, but also making sure that those content for the usability of these data sets for existing business processes is still relevant and current. Do we need to amend or include additional fields within the context of the schemas and processes in place? Are the appropriate business lines managing these? Is it appropriate to engage additional resources or others into both the existing standards that we will be updating, or through feedback from these advisory groups, where do we stand with potential standards in the areas? I've listed a few here: parcels, elevation, hydrography. Are there other data layers or other data models that are most appropriate for us to be working on? Something to go back one slide. You see the font on the slides is either blue or green. The blue are things that VGIN staff have identified as most obvious in considering the context, priority, and feedback through this process. The green is something, again, that we've taken from the feedback, but also would look to the respective stakeholder groups to provide their input on the prioritization and direction for how we do how we implement the initiative. So we've talked about potential for developing additional standards, also the National Spatial Reference System, National Geodetic Survey, and their technical leadership in replacing and succeeding current datums, and how that translates to the upcoming necessary lead times, modifications to software, understanding the direction and timing of when the details for NSRS will be released. This is going to be something that will be influencing all of us in the community through the execution period of this particular strategic plan, and this is the initiative that made most sense to park it within. Strategic initiative number 3 is value-based best practices. Again, the concept of encouraging GIS managers to think in terms of a technology roadmap, how you exist or how you support existing business systems and applications, how you integrate new needs and evaluate and assess those, both within the data that you maintain or data that you acquire from another user or depend on another community to integrate into your business application. Obviously, cloud is going to become more important over time. What that implies in terms of managing the infrastructure or working with others that manage infrastructures. How does it impact your maintenance, your usability for your end users? What does it mean for staff readiness? Having a target and a horizon to be able to direct staff training is something that is increasingly encouraged, and making that hand in hand with the platform development, so that if you know that you're moving towards cloud, both as a business line as well as IT and GIS, what does that mean for your staff preparation? Do you need to think about training in advance and timing that, resourcing that, putting the priority there so that you're ready for those transition points and milestones? And then, of course, IT and security, making sure that we stay in our lane, professionally speaking, focusing on the geospatial aspects, and then also understanding the roles within IT strategy and security, so that that we don't get bogged down by that, or the deployment timelines are covering all the bases that these other communities expect. The green text for proposed and needing much more feedback on, and this one is the consideration for business outcome metrics, being able to articulate how the resources that are invested for staff, platforms, data maintenance, et cetera, how all of those work together for the benefit of the business line, as well as having an understanding of what this means for opportunities that cross business lines. So maybe you're an agency that doesn't maintain road centerline data, but it is very functional to the operations and analysis of your application, that you need that, and we need to be able to track that and also take those requirements and use cases into account as we think about updating data standards, for instance. Strategic initiative number 4 is Next Generation 911 support. Again, across the Integrated Services Program, we are the only Commonwealth or state that has GIS and 911 closely affiliated and within the same management structure. Next Generation 911 will be deployed across the Commonwealth beginning in Q1 of 2020, and will be completed by Q4 of December 2021. That'll be 124 deployments across a 2-year span. That's more than one per week. There are several key instances where not just the GIS technology, but the telecommunication infrastructure, the internal IT infrastructure for the public safety answering points, all have to be aligned. GIS will play a very key role in Next Generation 911, as at the time of full deployment, there will be support for geospatial call routing. That is a point and polygon analysis to use the location of the 911 caller in relevance to in context of the PSAP boundary areas, to identify which PSAP to direct the caller. That will happen 4 million times per year, as that's the number of calls that the PSAPs get on an annual basis. And it really does increase the awareness, particularly at the local government level, on the utility, the accuracy, and the persistence and maintenance for GIS data. The residual benefits across the stakeholder community is with that heightened exposure and integration with literally a life or death business process. The quality of that data is going to be highly improved in accuracy, and also that accuracy will be a benefit to all the applications where this is aggregated into statewide layers. Strategic initiative number 5 deals with the enterprise engagement. So again, focusing on establishing and facilitating the stakeholder communities at a broad level, as well as facilitating the intercommunication between the stakeholder communities to find opportunities for reuse, find opportunities to expand the value and context for geospatial, whether your enterprise is a local government, a portion of a state agency, an entire state agency, or the footprint of the Commonwealth. We'll also be able to use this strategic initiative to implement those best practices in these areas for demonstrating value in alignment with the business goals and directions of your enterprise context, as well as stronger engagement with IT management. Those are the 5 strategic initiative areas. I'll pause here if folks would like to unmute and ask questions, make comments. You can also have the chat box as a forum. Okay, so the timing in the next steps, we've got webinars throughout the month for localities, state agencies, and academic communities. We'll be integrating the feedback from folks on these various platforms into updating, massaging the draft documents and the story map as it's developed throughout December. We'll be setting up the locality and state agency manager groups for meetings in January and February. I would encourage folks that are interested in participating to represent their agency to reach out to me. And by the VGIN Advisory Board meeting on January 7th, I will be pushing these documents to a final stage, announcing and promulgating the content once the VGIN board has their opportunity to look at, and then we'll proceed with the strategic initiative implementation and deployment. We do have one question that came in through the chat box. The local advisory groups will be 2 per ISP region. The agency advisory management, we will be looking for the highest level manager that we can get. So we've already had some outreach to VDEM, VDOT, and others. We'll be continuing that throughout the month of December and into January. And then we can't have it be a 60-person body, but we do want to make sure that agencies do have the opportunity to engage both here in the Richmond area. We would certainly look to integrate field offices from across the state, if that is how GIS is oriented within the particular enterprise. So with that said, somebody has moved us to hold. Thank you very much for taking us off hold. With that said, we don't want it to be restrictive in any way, but at the same time, the state agency manager groups the state agency manager group will meet on a quarterly basis. We'll also seek to set up the state agency user groups. Traditionally, those have been shared between a downtown location and an off-site location in the Richmond area. We'll still look to continue those and calendar those on a more regular basis. We'll certainly provide the feedback and report out to those user groups. The manager group will be, again, as much as we can accommodate one per agency. We'll look for alternates where it makes sense. We're also looking both for the locality and the state agency groups to provide context and access to subject matter experts. So, for instance, if we have, say, 14 agencies participating, you've got 14 individuals in the communication loop for the stakeholder group. We want to make sure that we're not limited to that subject matter expertise pool. We want to open that as wide as we can and give everybody an opportunity to contribute and derive value from the process. We are at 11:37. We have the rest of the time period for feedback, for Q&A. I'll go ahead and shift over to the last slide of the deck, which is my contact info. If you would like to contact me directly, you have my email address and office phone there. Certainly looking for management representatives from the agencies for your enterprise. Many of you know who you are. Some of you I've already reached out to. Others will be hearing from me shortly as we proceed through the process. Again, we want to make sure that it's prescriptive. I've got a personal philosophy of not asking for anything if you don't receive anything in return or benefit. And so that's something that we want to engage and integrate as we move forward and deploying these strategic initiatives. Last call for questions or feedback. It looks like we had about 25 to 30 participants. Certainly appreciate you providing us an hour of your valuable time for this morning. Again, this is a process that will be ongoing and will be a commitment from VGIN to the agencies and to all the stakeholder communities to be transparent and open, and also looking for feedback during the month as we finalize the plan, but also moving forward as we begin deploying the outcomes of the initiatives. Thank you very much, and have a productive rest of the day.